EnliveX is a cell therapy company focusing on modulation of certain cells in the immune system to help the immune system combat vicious diseases that are still today responsible for significant mortalities among patients. These are diseases that there have been many different attempts over decades to find good solutions and good treatments for such patients. But it's very difficult to find good solutions because these diseases are very complex. They involve, it's like multifactorial elements within the system that are not adjusted, and thereby causing negative spiral of biological cascades that lead eventually to mortality. These diseases mainly that we're focusing on mainly include two main categories. One is infectious diseases for which there are really no solutions. The leading one is called sepsis. Sepsis today, and I'm talking pre-pandemic. Pre-pandemic was the third leading cause of mortality in the United States. The first one is cardiovascular, second one is cancer, the third one is sepsis. At this particular point of the discussion, typically the people that I'm talking to about this say, I've never heard about this. Like, how come, right? And the reason why you don't hear about it because you hear it's being named in other names. Typically, it's a bacterial infection that goes berserk. Okay, so people die from a worsening case of bacterial infection. It's sepsis. So typically what happens is that such a patient ends up with failing organs. Those failing organs could be heart, or could be lungs, or could be kidneys, or could be liver, like vital organs. And real failure in each one of them typically results in mortality if untreated. So that's on that front. And the other front, it's oncology, certain oncology indications that still today there are just the people that have no hope, treatments that just don't work, and they have a very short lifespan. Sometimes the lifespan can be 6 months, unfortunately. Sometimes the lifespan can be 24 months, but really, really bad condition, and the solutions are not satisfactory. So that's what we're after. Okay, that's what we're after.
Third biggest thing killing people in the US. Do you know how many people, to give people like a number, like, hey, it's this many people?
Yeah, in the US, typically every year it's about 250,000 people.
Wow, okay.
That die from sepsis. Now, maybe now in pandemic area, it doesn't seem like a large number. It's a huge number. Pre-pandemic, the stats were 1 of 3 that die in a hospital dies from sepsis. 1 of 3. Okay, and that's really bad. I mean, that's really bad. And there have been multiple attempts to try and find solutions for sepsis, and they all really didn't work. And we think that our solution, maybe for the first time in a very long time, has a decent solution of actually saving people. We already saw it in the first clinical trial that we ran, that we saved people. And now we're doing a second study, but I think that there is not an insignificant likelihood that our solution will prove to be working quite well and safe. And the reason is because we're doing something that no one else has ever done. And so sometimes innovations, I mean, sometimes you need some sort of thinking outside of the box, or some innovation to solve a problem that no one else can solve, right? And it happened about something like 7 years ago or so, with another company that was a cell therapy company that was named Kite Pharma. And they were the first ones to develop cell therapy solution for patients with blood cancers, patients whose average lifespan was 12 months. And they were able to save like 70% of them. But it required ingenuity, it required different type of thinking. Everybody was trying to solve blood cancers with various types of drugs. Nothing worked. So we're trying to do the same for sepsis and for other types of cancers. And the way we attack it is something that really no one else is doing, is we are going after modulation of immune cells that exist in our immune system. And these immune cells, from an evolutionary standpoint, they have a role of orchestrating immune reaction to certain situations. A pathogen enters your body, there needs to be a proper reaction. When I say proper, it needs to be on target. It doesn't need to be too low and it doesn't need to be too high. Okay, and in both situations, there's going to be danger. And then in cancer, they need to orchestrate, when they see cancer cells, they need to orchestrate activity of a lot of other immune system cells that you probably heard about, like T cells and natural killer cells and B cells and a bunch of other cells, killer cells, orchestrating and activation of those cells against these threats. Typically, it happens. I'm speaking to you, you're a healthy guy, you have a healthy immune system. Every day, your immune system is tackled with a threat. Some pathogen, maybe even a cancer cell that appeared yesterday. But your immune system is right there, attacks it properly, clears everything out. All of this orchestration is being conducted or initiates by these cells called macrophages in your body. They're part of the immune system. Unfortunately, in some patients, in some diseases, macrophages themselves are being negatively programmed by the disease. And when that happens, there is no proper response. The response can either be too much, the response can be too little. And basically what we do is very intriguing. We have a tool that knows how to bring those macrophages back to their desired state. So instead of, if the problem is that they work too much and they activate the immune system too much, leading to organ failure and mortality, we're bringing them back into, hey, relax, just go back to what you typically do. If they don't do too much, if they just lie around there and let these cancer cells grow, we are kicking their butt and bringing them back into their proper mode of activity. Because that's something totally innovative that no one else has done to date. We have had dozens of patients with organ failures that we treated that fully recovered very, very quickly. And we are scheduled to initiate our first trial in end stage solid tumor patients with peritoneal metastasis, a very difficult stage. We're scheduled to initiate that study either later this quarter or early next quarter, followed with another study later in the year with another population of end-stage cancer patients that have a variety of different cancers in combination with other drugs. So this is fundamentally, what we do, and we are really hopeful that during 2022 and 2023. There's going to be accumulation of data coming out of the various clinical trials that will demonstrate the continued potential of these therapies to be approved and save lives.
I love it. An amazing explanation. A question for you. I know it's going to come up, but what has been tested or what you guys have done to date? And, just a little bit more around, hey, we've already tried here, we're already in this part of the clinic, or whatever the timelines are for those. I think a lot of people are just hearing of EnliveX for the first time, and these would be extremely important points for them.
Sure. In just a preface, in cell therapy, because these are highly complex therapies, it's not just a pill that you manufacture somewhere and you send, a big box and you take 2 pills like Tylenol, and that's cell therapy. It's very complex to manufacture. It's very complex to ship. It's being provided intravenously for 3.5 hours, very slowly dripping. It's complex. So typically, not just our cell therapy, but any cell therapy. So typically, cell therapy clinical trials are relatively small in size. And the other reason why they're small in size is because the population, if you're already going to use cell therapy, and you're going to use it on patients that have no other alternatives, basically, that population is also relatively, relatively small in terms of testing. So you're not like testing anyone that has an infection, but you're only taking into your clinical trial those that have derailed, right, to a situation that they already have a failing organ and need to be saved, right? So that's typically for cell therapy. So we are very much the same. So we ran a first trial, and we did it in 10 sepsis patients. Each of those patients had between 2 to 5 organ dysfunctions, between 2 to 5 organ dysfunctions, each patient. And all those patients received Allocetra, our drug product, in a hospital setting through, intravenously. And we compared the results of what happened to these 10 patients with a group of 37 patients that were identical to our patients. When I say identical, I mean average age, ratio of males to females, the state of organ dysfunction, the source of organ dysfunction. So really trying to compare apples to apples, right? And so we compared that. And in the control group, that historical control group that we looked at, mortality in 28 days was 27%. Those that were not treated. Okay. And the other 73% that didn't die, about half of them, a little less than half of them, still had organ dysfunctions on day 28.
Yeah.
Okay, so basically means that some of them may die later, after 28 days. The 10 that we treated, all of them, all 10, left the hospital. Each dysfunctioned organ of each of those patients completely recovered to its pre-sepsis baseline.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's why we thought that it looks good. Now, on top of that, safety profile was very solid. So we didn't see any side effects, any problem. We didn't anticipate any problem with our drug. Then COVID came along. And in COVID, then suddenly there were all these patients that had failing lungs. It's a failed organ, right? So we said, hey, if our drug product can save organs from failing in bacterial diseases, maybe we can do that in viral diseases as well. So we did a study. It was basically 2 studies in combination with 21 patients that we treated that were in severe or critical condition with COVID-19, that all of them had failing lungs. All of them had failing lungs at different levels of failure. So about 11 of them were in severe condition and 10 were in critical condition. And on day 28, 19 of the 21, so 90%, left the hospital 5.6 days after receiving our drug product. 2 stayed in the hospital, but we had on day 28 we had no mortalities and 90% left the hospital. So, and again, safety was good. So we think that looking at those cases, we know that a critical patient doesn't leave the hospital in 5 days. Okay, we all know that. It's like we are familiar with patients that were in that condition. It's almost, it's extremely rare, right? Even in the Gilead study that they did with thousands of patients, and they gave remdesivir, their anti-COVID drug for severe patients. They're a comparable group of patients. They typically stayed in the hospital, 16 days to 30 days, something like that. So leaving after 5.5 days, it's very, very fast. So this has basically provided us with confidence. I mean, look, when we develop a drug, we do in vitro studies, then we do mice studies, right? Then we do other rodents. Then we get a good feel for the drug, and then we start testing it in humans. and so far, the whole story at least tells us that there is something very strong here that should be basically continued to be explored. When we ran our preclinical oncology program during 2021, we spent the whole year running multiple models in oncology. the results led us to believe that this could be very well suited to, as I said earlier, wake up those macrophages that are just sleeping while the cancer is growing, and wake them up and make sure that they have strong activity against the cancer. So we're very, very excited in 2022 to start testing it on real patients, and hopefully, be able to save some lives, as we did with the sepsis study and the COVID study. And last statement is that, some of the patients in our COVID study received what's called standard of care, right? So all of them received standard of care, but some of them received everything. So they received remdesivir, which is the Gilead medication that's supposed to save, and they continue to derail. And they received steroids, which were supposed to save, and they continue to derail. And they received the tocilizumab, which they were supposed to, and they continue to derail. And there was nothing else that anyone can give them. And then they got into our study, right? And we saved them. So it's not just patients, but some of those patients received everything and really didn't progress well, So this is all, providing us at least with the confidence that we definitely should move forward very aggressively with these clinical programs.
Yeah, incredible. Appreciate you doing that. Some crazy stories, and I'm sure we're gonna get a ton of questions. I'm sure we'll do a little Q&A coming forward. But again, I'd like to thank you so much. It sounds like 2022 is gonna be extremely exciting. Love to get this to some patients and obviously talk about how things are going. We have some news flow that'll hopefully be coming in the coming months to quarters, and looking forward to you guys starting that study.
Yeah. So look, remember that our COVID-19, we have very funky stories, but COVID-19 is not a priority. Just remember that. It was nice to see activity and safety of the drug, but that's definitely not the focus of the company. We're focusing on sepsis and we're focusing on oncology, and we want these messages to be very clear.
Yeah, no, got it. Well, hey, thanks so much for joining. Appreciate it. I want to always invite anyone with questions. Please drop it below. Lots of stuff to cover in the coming weeks and months, so we'll make sure it gets into a future video. But thanks so much for joining.
Thank you so much.